Okay. Okay, today we are studying the beauty of the struggle. Okay, remember last time we were studying about the creation, and today the simple truth is about beauty of the struggle. What kind of struggle are we talking about? Not a struggle against all the problems that we have, but an inner struggle. Excellent. Very good. An inner struggle. It's a struggle with our characteristics, with the personality that we have. It's a struggle with our own personal growth. So each one of us might have imperfection. Some things are perfect, some things are imperfect. If you were to be God and you were to choose your own perfections, your own things, your own characteristics, would you choose anything different?
No.
Who knows?
Who knows? Right. Very good. You guys are ahead of it. Ahead of the game. Okay, so look into the book. There's a book. Everybody should have a book like this. Sarah, the book. Look at page 90 in your book, in your student book.
I
Oh, you need to listen. Okay, it's okay. You can just listen. You can just listen. That's fine. Okay, so look at exercise 1. It says, below is a list of 6 things that make us feel bad. Number them 1 to 6, with 1 indicating feeling the least bad and 6 indicating feeling the worst. So do you want me to read them to you? So you can see what they are and understand which ones are so bad and which ones are not so bad. Okay? So the first one is your wallet is stolen and now you need to file a police report. Get a new driver's license and cancel all your credit cards. That's a bad thing to happen to you.
No.
But the question is, how bad is it? Second thing, you lose your temper and you yell at your child over a silly thing, a minor offense, reducing him to tears. Is that a bad thing?
Bad.
Okay, is that worse
No.
or better than the one before?
Equal.
It's different.
Okay, she says it's equal. She says it's worse. Okay,
I
just
think
hold
it's
that
different.
thought. Hold that thought.
Different problem, so.
Hold that thought. It doesn't matter what's worse to you. How would you feel? Do you feel better or worse when that happens? You break your leg and fall, God forbid, resulting in a long and painful recovery, costly medical bills, and the cancellation of your vacation plans. Is that good?
No.
Bad. Of course it's bad, but how bad is it?
Very
You need
bad.
to think how bad it is.
Very bad.
Is it worse? It's worse than losing your temper? Is it worse than losing your wallet?
Of course, if you
Yes.
can tell.
Depended how many money was in your wallet.
In your wallet.
Bad one,
Okay.
everything.
Okay, the next one. Shh. Guys over there. You mess up at work, but someone else is blamed for your mistake and gets fired for it. You lack the courage to say anything. Is that bad?
Very bad.
That's even worse than the other ones,
Yeah.
you think?
No.
Yeah.
No?
I still
Okay.
say that losing it over your child is the worst.
Okay, there you go. In a moment of weakness, you do something that deeply hurts your spouse. He forgives you, but you feel that your relationship will never be the same again. Is that bad?
Not good.
It depends what the thing is.
So how guilty you feel.
Yeah.
Okay. The last one. A friend in need asks you for financial assistance. It is within your means to help him, but you plead poverty and you turn him down. You say, I don't have any money. How can I help you? How do you feel after that?
Bad.
That's pretty bad. Yeah.
Pretty bad?
Guilty.
I feel bad.
And what do you think is the worst thing of all of these? The child. Anybody else have the worst? Which is the worst for you?
The first one.
The first one, when you lose your wallet? Ah,
The leg.
the leg. The leg is the worst? Okay. Okay.
Credit card.
Like
No, when somebody
remember Mattie?
when somebody is blamed for
Matechka,
The last
last
one?
week I lost Tegilim, you know
Right,
about
right,
that.
right,
But
right.
it's
For
bad.
me it was worse than all another
And
which
any
I lost.
other thing that you ever lost in
Yes.
your life. But that's losing a thing. But
Yeah.
here we're talking about, one thing we're talking about losing something, then the other thing we're talking about is hurting somebody else. So which is worse, losing something or hurting somebody?
What?
Losing something.
Okay, she says losing something,
I
she
think
says hurting
hurting somebody
someone,
is
hurting someone. Everybody has their ideas. There we go. So some of them is something that happened to us, and some of them is a character. Some of these are something that happened to us, and some of these are a character trait that affects other people. So now it is, which is worse? Is it the trait or the actual action that happened? Yelling is bad, but others taking the blame is worse. Because when you yell, you can teach yourself to stop. But if someone else takes the blame for what you did, that means it's your character trait. It's something that you did as a person.
You lied.
You lied, right? And that could be worse. That could be harder. So an action's allowing it to happen to yourself, and you're blaming yourself for it. Now, when we look at the idea of Torah, and we look at the idea of a person repenting, when a person repents for his action, God forgives him, right? When he did something wrong, and you repent, God forgave you. But a character trait, when you're upset about yourself that you're an angry person, or a disappointed kind of a person, or a disloyal person, or a liar, or a cheater, or whatever else you want to call yourself, right? Don't be depressed, because your traits are only human. We're only human beings. So now the question is, how can we deal with those character traits? So the Tanya gives us two kinds of people. Actually more than two, but two kinds that we're going to talk about now. One is a tzaddik. What is a tzaddik? It's a perfect person. A person that has no imperfection. The other one is a person who's always struggling, always trying to get better and better and better. And we understand that a tzaddik, none of us are tzaddikim. It's very small chance to find a tzaddik. Because a person who's perfect is usually not in this world. He can be an angel. But there are a few angels in this world that God put into this world, but not very easy to find. Perfect, basically, is when you're perfect in thought, speech, and deed. Okay, so look at text number 2. Text number 2 is on page 92. Not exercise 2, it's text number 2. I'm sorry, it's not there. That's not text number 2. Okay, let's find text number 2. That was...
It's on page 94.
Matichka, who
Yeah, page
decided,
94.
tzaddik this person or no? Who decided? It's dependent
Okay.
from meaning each other. Some decided yes, it's the perfect person.
Excellent, excellent question. Now, the Tanya is going to tell us what is a tzaddik right now. So we'll understand what he means, what the Tanya means by a tzaddik. We'll understand what we're talking about when we say tzaddik. Okay. So God saw that tzaddikim are few, so he planted them in every generation. So that's number 2. Okay. So now if we look at text number 3, does someone want to read text number 3?
I can read it.
Okay, go ahead.
What page?
Page number 94. 94.
The introduction of the concept of the intermediate is doubtless the essential innovation of the Tanya. Although it is not a new term, it appears here in a new connotation and spells a fundamental departure from the basic premises of most systems of the moral teaching Musar.
Okay, so now we'll understand, right, just a minute, now we'll understand the difference between a tzaddik and a Benoni, which is a righteous person and a struggler. Okay, go ahead.
The aim of the Musar books and the ideal to which they strive to elevate the human being is the tzaddik of the
ideal
of the tzaddik is perfectly righteous individual. In contrast, Tanya was written for intermediates, for those who have not attained the station of tzaddik. Though they are not transgressors, Risha and wicked person, the person of the Benoni acquires new definition. The intermediate person is not merely the median, the halfway point between utter evil and utter goodness. The Benoni is in a class alone. The Musar books that discuss this rank saw it as a temporary stage that one must surpass as a spiritual dissonance to be stabilized and resolved.
Okay, so stop there for a second. So we said that according to the Musar books, the tzaddik means someone who's very righteous, And what does a Benoni mean? A struggler. It means a person who's in between, that we have to get past that. Okay? But the Tanya doesn't say that the tzaddik and the Benoni, the righteous one and the struggler, are the same. He explains it in a different way. So let's see how the Tanya explains it. Go on.
But the Tanya sees the state of Benoni as a legitimate, ongoing one, describing a person whose inner essence and spiritual path is the subject of a lifelong struggle. A struggle that might never reach decisive resolution.
Okay, so in other words, what he's saying a Benoni is a person who's constantly struggling. I have a character problem. I have difficulty. What kind of difficulty do I have? I get angry very quickly, let's say, right? So I am the struggler. Every time I feel like I'm ready to get angry, I stop myself. And it's always coming back again. So that's the Benoni. He always has that feeling to get angry, but he doesn't let it take a part of him. He works on it and works on it all his life. What is the tzaddik? Go ahead.
Unlike the tzaddik, who is in a state of constant stability, the Benoni state is not inherently stable. We can say that the Tanya's purpose is to show the Benoni how to maintain balance, how to remain in a state where, although the temptation to do wrong exists, one does not sin, neither in deed, word, nor thought.
Okay, so in other words, what does the Benoni have to reach? He has to reach a level that he doesn't have it in thought, speech, and deed. In other words, if I get a moment that something comes into my brain that I should do something wrong, what do I need to do right away?
Think of something else.
Think of something else, push it away, whatever you want to do, but not let it become part of my thought process. And I'll keep doing that all my life because it always comes into my brain. The same thing. Because everybody has their own problem. Everyone has all your own difficulty. Whether it's anger, whether it's disappointment, whether it's disloyalty, whether, I don't always tell the truth, etc., etc., etc. You can be a nice person and have all those thoughts in your mind. Why? Because the minute it comes to your brain, you push it away. And you say, I'm not gonna entertain that thought. I'm not gonna say anything. Yeah.
And it's not just about like taking negative action, it's just like even what you think about somebody, right?
Right, so in other words, when that thought comes into your brain, for a split second, all of a sudden you start thinking about, oh, that person, blah, 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 I don't really like that person. You stop it right there before you can entertain the thought and add to the thought.
What if you like aren't even conscious? You know, because sometimes like
right.
Be like
No, that's normal. If you're not conscious of it, that's the Benoni, that's the struggle. So once you become conscious of it, you stop it, that's your struggle.
Got it.
Okay? Then let's go on further. Okay, so here we have the tzaddik that is rare, that we don't really find people like that. He's perfect in everything, in his thought, speech, and deed. That basically means that he doesn't even have it subconsciously in his mind. Us strugglers have it subconsciously in our mind. Sometimes we think about it. Sometimes we speak about it. Sometimes we act upon it. But we need to learn this is our tasks. There are times in our life that we are like tzaddik. Why? Because some people never get angry. No matter what you say to them, they never get angry.
Yeah.
It's not because... No, it's not because... Right, it's a gift. It's not because they're any better than someone else. It's because God gave them different problems. Yeah.
What about like real tzaddiks? Like, how do we know that nothing bad goes in their brain?
You can look at them and see it. You know, you can see it through and through. When you see a holy person, you walk down the street, you can just see their face. You can tell that they're holy. I saw it in the Lubavitcher Rebbe. I've never seen it in anybody else. Oh, one more person. The guy that was here, an old man, he was about 80 years old. He was not even Jewish. When you looked at his face, you saw something glowing. Something special. Yes. There was something special about him. I looked at him, he looked like an angel. An absolute angel. So I think that at tzaddik you kind of feel it automatically. You can feel that there's something there, that he doesn't have that struggle.
But, I mean, some people, like, you're not born with this. You have to work to get it.
No, that's the whole point. You can be born as a tzaddik.
Yeah.
You cannot become a tzaddik later. You can become a Benoni, which means you don't sin at all. But you will always have that struggle in the back of your mind. Like we say, an alcoholic will always be an alcoholic. Why? Because when you see alcohol, you still want to drink it. But the fact that you're not drinking it, that means that you're a Benoni. That you've already worked on yourself, and you've gotten to a point that you see it, you want it, but you don't act on it. And this is what it is. Also a person that's on drugs. Someone who takes marijuana, they will maybe be off of it for 5 or 6 years, and when they see someone smoking, they think, oh, I want it. But they won't take it. But they'll just think that thought. So this is the same thing as a Benoni. There are other things that people have that you don't know. Fear, anger, disloyalty, disappointment. There's all these different things that people will have that'll be a little bit more difficult for them to overpower. So different people struggle with different characteristics. I may have impatience, and someone else may have the problem of anger. So we are all Beinonim. We're all the high level, the highest level. We all can be a tzaddik in a certain point in our life. But now the question is there a purpose to our struggle? We all struggle, right? What's the purpose? Maybe the purpose is to overcome the struggle. But guess what, guys? We never overcome that struggle. We keep going and going and going with that same struggle. And it's not so easy. But so let's look at the idea of the world first. To really understand about the purpose of our purpose, let's see the macrocosm so we can see the microcosm. You know what a macrocosm is? It's the whole world. And the microcosm is the cell, right? It's the small part of it. So we look at the macrocosm and look at the world. How do we understand the world? What do we know about the world? What do we know about the 4 spiritual worlds? There are 4 spiritual worlds. Why? Because when God created the world, He can't come down to this world right away. So it needs to go through stages. So the highest stage, remember, is called Atzilut, which is closest to God. Then goes Bria, which is creation. Then goes Yetzirah, which is already forming. Right? And then goes Asiya, which is the world of action. And we all are in this world of action. So we're the farthest away from God. This world, this physical world, is very far from God. So it's very difficult. Huh?
The lowest one.
Yeah, we are at the lowest. We are the least perfect world. Okay? Atzilus, which is closer to God, is more pearl. That's why we struggle, exactly. So look at text number 4. Okay, anyone want to read text number 4?
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
Now the purpose of the evolution of the worlds and their descent from level to level is not for the sake of the higher worlds, since for them this is a descent from the luminance of the divine. Rather, the purpose is this lowly world.
Right. So exactly. This world is actually the purpose for what this world was created. In other words, the whole world was created for this world because we're the furthest away from God. The higher worlds don't need to perfect anything because they're already perfect. So we need to perfect. So the darker the world, the more pleasure God has. So why do we struggle? To take some imperfection, darkness from the world, and make it into light. We are taking our imperfection and bringing small pieces of perfection back into this world, little by little by little. So when we struggle, God has a lot of pleasure. Why does He have pleasure? Because we're bringing back little pieces of light into this imperfect world.
From up there.
Right. So when you struggle, when you have a difficult time with your character, you are bringing more light into the world.
But only when you are trying to fix it, right?
Of course. Yes, when you struggle, you are fixing it.
Okay.
Obviously, you're struggling means you're trying to fix it.
Okay.
Okay. Go back to text 1. Text 1, page 91. Page 91. Not exercise 1. Page 91. Okay, does anybody want to read text 1? Okay, go ahead.
Я тебе открою, ты читай.
There are three distinct relationships people can have to their work. Jobs, careers, and callings. The distinctions drawn starkly are these. People who have jobs are only interested in material benefits from work and do not seek or receive any other type of reward from it. The work is not an end in itself, but instead is a means that allows individuals to acquire the resources needed to enjoy their time away from the job. The major interests and ambitions of job holders are not expressed through their work.
Right, so what is a job? A job is something that you go to, and you only want it because you're gonna get paid. That's a job.
But at home you never pay.
I'm just saying, no, what he's saying is that when you go to a job, what's the reason the person wants to go to the job? It's because he's going to get paid. Okay, what's the next one?
In contrast, people who have careers have a deeper personal investment in their work and mark their achievements not only through monetary gain but through advancements within the occupational structure. This advancement often brings higher social standing, increased power within the scope of one's occupation, and higher self-esteem for the worker. Finally, people with callings find that their work is inseparable from their life. A person with a calling works not for financial gain or career advancement, but instead for the fulfillment of doing what the work brings to the individual. The word calling was originally used in a religious context as people were understood to be called by God to do morally and socially significant work. While the modern sense of calling may have lost its religious connection, work that people feel called to is usually seen as socially valuable, an end in itself, involving activities that may but need not be pleasurable.
Okay, so what's the difference between a job, a career, and a calling?
And
And a calling. Okay.
Job is just for money.
Right. What's a career?
Comes with like power and social status, and it's usually something you do for your whole life. And a calling is
You're doing something.
A calling is you're doing it because you feel that you'll benefit something spiritually, emotionally. That's a calling.
you're drawn to it.
You're drawn to it, exactly. Okay, so those are three different things. There's a very interesting story about this nurse, okay, talking about a job, a career, and a calling, whether the person, you can tell me at the end whether this woman was doing it for a job, as a career, or as a calling, or something higher than what she was thinking. Okay, so this woman, her name was, actually, this family, their two children, no, their child and the parents were in a car accident. And the parents were in the hospital and the child was in a different ward in the hospital. And she was very, very upset because she didn't have her mother with her and she was by herself and nobody came to be with her because her parents were also in the hospital. And there was one nurse called Martha, and she was always coming to her, and she was sitting by her bed, and she sat with her for like hours because the child was frightened. And until the child became better and better and better, the nurse Martha sat with her. And at the end, they said goodbye to Nurse Martha because she got better, and the parents came, and they took her away. At the beginning, they were keeping in touch with her because they felt like she took care of this child with so much passion. It must be something amazing. But you know what happens after a while? You forget about the woman and whatever, and that's it. And it's done.
Right.
So fast forward many, many years. There was this nurse, Martha. She was like 70 years old. And she started to get old, and she needed some operation in the hospital. So she goes to the hospital, and she doesn't feel very well or whatever, and she sees that this one nurse takes care of her like unbelievable. She was shocked. So she starts to tell her, she says, I want to tell you my story. When I was a little kid, I was in a car accident, and this nurse took care of me, and I decided because of that to become a nurse. Because I felt that this was a very important thing. And she said, and then we moved away, we moved overseas, and now I came back, I married somebody, and I came back to the States, and I become a nurse, and I decided that I want to do this, the same thing that Nurse Martha did to everybody. I want to really take care of these patients as if they're my friends. And Nurse Martha said, you don't recognize me? I am that nurse. And so the girl ended up taking this nurse Martha home, and she nursed her, and she decided that she'll live with her, for the rest of her life, and she'll take care of her. But you see that this is called a calling. This is not a job. It wasn't a job that she took care of this little kid like that. It wasn't a career that she was going to become a very high doctor in the hospital. But this was a calling. She felt like this is her life, and she really needed to do this. And this is what was very important in her life. So,
Nice.
when we have a calling to something, we put our whole passion into it. This is the same with our character. When we work on ourselves, we need to put our whole passion in, as if it's a calling, as if it's something that's a part of us, that's very important to us. So how do we get to this? So look at text 11. And text 11 is...
Is anybody here? I apologize. I have to make a short announcement, Mattie.
You're going to be on the video if you make a short announcement.
Mattie, a short announcement.
Okay.
My Uber was driving me for more than 1 hour.
Okay. Oh,
That's
terrible.
Can you imagine?
It's really terrible.
Huh?
Okay, so open up to text 11. It's page 103. What's on page 103? What?
For your calling, you don't necessarily have to use them as a career. Because, I feel as though I have a calling, but it's very unlikely that I'll be
No. A calling doesn't necessarily mean it's your career. A calling can be something else that has nothing to do with your career. Okay, I think I made a mistake. It's not 7. One second, I'll tell you.
Вы делаете
Okay, I'll tell you in a minute.
вы смотрите за кем-то. Деньги не
Okay, so only a tzaddik could control their anger. No one else could control their anger. I'll tell you in a minute where it is. Okay? The only thing we could do is we could control what? What can we control? Ourselves, right? You can't control anybody else. You can only control whatever you can do.
You cannot control the Uber. This is
Right,
for sure
exactly.
statement.
Yes, definitely. But we're talking about character traits. So we're not talking about the outside control. We're talking about your character traits.
Character trait.
Yeah. Okay, so look at page 129.
129?
Сара, здравствуй.
Привет,
Я
привет.
тебя увидела.
It is 103?
Text 11.
А я тебе звонила. Смотри,
Она горячая или холодная?
For some reason I don't have it here. So, okay.
120.
103 is text 11?
Yes.
Okay, let's look.
Когда творочка готовит, тогда все горячее.
Okay, so what is the second simple truth? Ki karav elecha hadavar ma'od b'ficha b'vacha la'asoso. It is close to you, within your reach, to follow the Torah in speech, feeling, and deed. Okay, now let's look at text 12. Okay, who wants to read text 12? Okay, go ahead.
The true warrior longs for the battlefield, for the rest of life seems in comparison like a place where he is able to actualize only a small part of who he is. So he craves the challenge and the encounter. He loves living on the edge. It is here that he is the most of who he is, and where he discovers that he is in fact more than who he thinks he is. Living as a Jew and a chassid is this experience. It is an encounter with the Almighty and with myself. It is the place of self-discovery and challenge. It requires the bravery of facing who I am and who I am not.
That's the problem with us. We don't want to face who we are and who we're not. That's the brave part. We need to be brave on that. Go on.
It takes a willingness to see the potential of who I can be, and face the smallness of who I allowed myself to be.
Mm-hmm.
As a spiritual warrior, when I am blessed to be living smack in the middle of the battlefield, I am fully alive, wrestling at the edge of who I am. It matters not whether I am in prayer, giving my child a bath, or sitting at my computer.
In other words, it's every single moment. This battle does not give us any quiet. It's always there. Go on.
The battlefield includes my personal relationships, my inner desires, my overdrawn bank account, and my constant lack of sleep. It embraces my marriage and employment, my frustration, patience, envy, lust, and greed. It is state of mind, a willingness to find God in all places and to meet Him fully, allowing Him to penetrate into the deepest recesses of who I am and to dispel all the images of who I think I am.
Yeah, right.
Each time, and there are many such times, that I confront the imperative of what I must do with the reluctance of what I want to do. Each time that I must transform thoughts and attitudes formed through years of life and conditioning into holy thoughts and holy attitudes, I am on the battlefield.
Yes, we're always on that battlefield. Go on.
As a spiritual warrior, I discover my faith when I am in the limits of my faith. I find my love of God when I am angry with God.
Right, so in other words, that's the whole battle. So what do? You have your limits in faith when you actually discover your faith at that time, right? You find your love of God when you're angry, when you're in a bad mood, when you're angry at God. That's when you find the love of God. Go on.
I find my trust in the protector of the world when I am at my most frightened. And I find my obedience to the Almighty when I feel the most rebellious.
Yes, definitely.
The Tanya tells us to rejoice when we are challenged within or without, because this is our task, to enter the battlefield. We are, it seems to me, like soldiers who have trained endlessly for battle, and shout in joy when the moment finally arrives to test their abilities and find the real stuff of which they are made.
So in other words, when do you find the real stuff of what you're made up?
When they're in the battlefield.
When you're really having a struggle.
And this is the spiritual warrior's challenge, to find the stuff of which he is made, whether it is to his liking or not, and to bring himself fully into the struggle with himself and his encounter with God.
Right. So in other words, this is not easy.
It's like a poem.
Yes, it's definitely like a poem, but it's also an extreme difficulty. So now I'm going to give you this paper. It says My Personal World, and it's something that you can just look at actually, because there's two papers of each.
I have a question though.
Yeah, sure.
So like, I totally understand you find God
The
when
paper-
you're in struggle.
the paper
That's been
who
my
teach, yeah?
experience.
Okay.
But when I'm feeling the most rebellious, it's not when I find obedience. It's actually when I like don't care.
You know what? You're probably not feeling rebellious enough.
Oh, okay.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, if you just feel rebellious and you just just go on with it, it does nothing. But I think if you feel very rebellious and it's one of those times that you're just can't deal with it anymore, that's when all of a sudden you find,
This way.
there. Okay, so look at this paper. It says My Personal World. The first one is my greatest attribute. The second one is nice inborn traits. The third one is inborn weaknesses and my greatest flaw. So it's interesting because I know that usually you do this on a piece of paper for yourself just to see the things that you have. So now the question is, do you utilize your talents and ability to accomplish things in your life? And then you see, that's it. And then you evaluate whether you can use your strength to overcome your least favorite traits. So in other words, this is an analyzation of ourselves. You probably can do that at home and check it out for yourself because it's something that you need to connect to and see if you can work on these different traits in your home. The second paper actually is kind of interesting because these are all the things that you have flaws that you're born with. And you can see all the different types of flaws, and you can see that you don't have all of them. You only have some of them.
It's like reading the worst side of myself.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh
Right.
my God, I am.
So basically, we keep struggling as a people. Each time, there's always new struggles. So it's not just about our inner struggle, it's also about our struggles collectively. If we see that in Israel, let's say, right? What happened? First there was the 1948 war. Then there was the 1967 war. Then there was the 1973 war. Then there was the Intifada, etc., etc., etc. So in other words, Israel as a body, as a whole, we keep struggling. And each time we say, well, when are we going to finish? I think it was interesting. It was like Golda Meir once told somebody. She came and said, you know what? My father passed away in the 48 war. My brother passed away in the 67 war. My husband passed away in the 73. My child passed away in the 73 war. Is it all worth it? So Golda says, you know what? It's worth it because we're all as one. We are worth it to be able to struggle together so we could reach somewhere as a whole, as a nation, as a people. And I thought that was beautiful. Not an easy thing to tell a parent or whatever, but it's just the idea that we need to do all this struggle together. And this is the kind of struggle that we need to work on until Mashiach comes. Because this is our difficulty in our life. And this is what we really need to get to. Struggle is good. That's what we talked. You missed the whole class you didn't hear the part that the struggle is a good thing, not a bad thing. We're not talking about struggling when you have something wrong. We're talking about struggling with your character. This is the struggle. It's the inner struggle.
But I mean, wouldn't even struggling when something's wrong be part of your character because you're not accepting of this is what God's making for you?
Well, that's a very deep thought, and that is actually true. Yes, definitely. So if you do have an inner struggle, yes, if you have an inner struggle, that has to do with your character usually. Because God is trying to show you something. And if you're not paying attention to it, that's the problem.
I remember I heard this story on YouTube where this lady, she had like terminal cancer, and the rabbi asked her, you know, like, if you had a chance to like live your life over again without this disease,
what would you do?
Would you do it? And she said, no, I would make everything the exact same as I want, and as it is.
As it is.
It's not because I want to have cancer, but if I was like,
Selected.
not have cancer, then I'm living somebody else's life, and not the life that God gave for me.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you see, every person wants their own struggle. I mean, the thing is, if we wanted to get a certain type of characteristics, and we would go out back to heaven and say, God, can you change it for me? We'd probably pick the same characteristics again. Because you don't realize how much it's a part of you, how much it is your personality, how much a part of your personality.
But we're asking God to make it as
Easier.
light as possible.
As easy as possible. Definitely, we can pray to God and tell God to make it as easy as possible. But we still want our same old peckle. All our peckle. We want the same peckle, always. We'll never add someone else's peckle.